All right, 7:02, I'm going to call my last meeting to order.
End of an era.
End of an era, that's right. We have any amendments to the agenda? Anybody, we're good?
I don't think so.
All right, we'll move on to 3.1, the minutes from January 11th. I do have one thing because I'm confused because I was either there or I wasn't there. Maybe that's just my state of mind right now, but it said I was there, then the end it said I was absent, so.
Oh, yeah.
Joel, you had something?
You're omnipresent, Brian.
I was just gonna move it so we could discuss it. There.
Well, you guys just want to jump ahead so fast. All right, so moved and seconded by Joel and Rob. Any discussion?
Other than what you picked up on, I don't see anything.
Oh yeah. No, other than that, it looked good. Joel's reading it now.
I'm just looking.
Most of
it
that
over,
5 minutes
but
before the meeting started.
I missed that, so you know.
All right, so nobody has anything, all in favor? And that passes 5-0. All right, let's move to fun stuff. Fiscal year 22 budget process and goals discussion. John, you want to lead this or?
Ooh.
Ooh.
Yeah, well, so I had a chance to talk with a number of you over the last couple of weeks. So sent out a copy of where we are to date, including some unedited budget year-end numbers for fiscal year 20. And, you know, obviously that we had some impacts to the budget relating to, some of the work we had to do related to COVID. However, as I kind of mentioned in my report to you guys, in my manager's report, a lot of some of these numbers here look a little bit skewed because of the fact that we weren't able to bring in the carry forwards yet, and some of our reserve monies are still kind of they're unaudited, so it makes it difficult to show them in a report like this. So I'm hoping once we have a chance to have the good folks from William Brewer and Associates to come by and take a look at the books that we can have a better representation. Regardless, I mean, looking over at the overall picture of everything, we're a little bit ahead on some departments, but by the time you put some of those funds, those carry forward funds in and whatnot, we're pretty much on line with where we expect to be. Probably the biggest outlier is more on the revenue side. We've collected, because of the period where we went ahead and we didn't capture any excise tax, all of that was lumped into FY21. So, we've already collected 86.7% of our year to be expected of excise tax. So we're going to not only take the number of 385,000, and we're going to blow through that by a good spell. So there's also that, and then the other piece that's probably again one of these pieces that don't really fit real well in a report like this is the Academy Hill project. So that's one where we're borrowing from a bond that we had taken out with the first, and we're going to be finally moving some of those funds back into out of the loan and into our account. So when I had sent you the number that said we had 1.8 million in the bank, that's before tomorrow we're going to be working on to move over the remainder of those funds. So we're going to be at really closer to 2.2 million in the bank. So again, that's not a hard and fast number. We don't want to go to the penny on that today. It's not an audited number, but it's a number that you can feel pretty good about the fact that the fiscal health of the town is in pretty good shape. This is pretty much the low point of our spending year. Between our first tax payment in October 1 and our second tax payment in April 1, we start to get those bills coming in through the month of March. So, February, late January, that's really when we're at our low ebb. So we're in a good place in terms of cash on hand. Again, like I said in my report, it's a much different picture than where Brian was 10 years ago. So that's a good thing. And, I think overall, just kind of look at the overall picture, I think we're in great shape. So we kind of talked about, for those I met with and those who had questions, we really talked about really the current year and where we were at the end of last year. This is really more about, okay, then where do we set the stage from here? What are the big items that are important to the 5 of you, or soon 4 of you? What do you want to see in terms of what this budget looks like when you get, the new columns that say FY22? What are they looking like? What are the policy goals for the 5 of you or 4 of you that you want to see incorporated in whatever this document becomes when you see it again in a month or so? So that's really what tonight's about. And I've given a couple different ideas in terms of some things that you can look at. Overall, percentage of increase perhaps for the commitment. Overall, what does the board want to set in terms of salaries, percentage? Looking at the roads plan. You stick with the roads plan. Is there a different roads plan? Do we want to be more aggressive, less aggressive? There's buildings, so there's a lot of infrastructure needs. We talked a little bit last year about some exterior needs at the town office building and the Taniscott building. I think there's some other needs also at the Sheepshead station as well. So this isn't meant to get too far in the weeds. Really, it's really meant to stay at the 10,000 foot level. But allow me to kind of pilot to land this plane into a place that when you get this back in a month and you see these numbers filled in, hopefully it's heading in the direction that the 4 of you were already thinking of, and then we're really figuring out the details of how to get to the exact numbers that we want to be. Or there's questions to say you'd like to be able to do this amount for roads, but given the overall picture, I'm more recommending you do this amount. Does it mean you change your theory in another area? If you said you wanted a flat budget and there's no way to meet 15 capital needs in roads and have a flat budget, then you would have the ability to sit down and look at those numbers at that point and say, okay, maybe it's not 15, maybe it's 7, or whatever that is. So that's the purpose of tonight, is really just to kind of create the sandbox for myself and then Seth and Clayton and everybody. So that's the idea. So that's the starting point. Not sure where you want to start or go from, or if you just want to kind of go kind of all over the map. And Seth's here to talk about specific road needs. And the one thing I would say that in the past years, boards have really kind of focused in on those, expenditures in roads and capital needs in roads. So I don't know if you want to start there or if you want to hit some of the other parts and then circle back to roads, whatever you're feeling comfortable with.
Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, I think I kind of see it as as kind of a probably more than 2, but at least 2-part process. I think my inclination is overall, we want to keep our overall expenditures fairly steady. So, a little bit of inflation, 2-3% maximum increase as a target. Salaries, I think reasonable, again, a little bit, 2-3%, something. I mean, I don't really know salaries, but so I'd defer to judgment on what other towns and comparable organizations are doing with salaries. So I want to be, we've gotten a lot out of our staff this year, and I really appreciate that and want to make sure that we keep them compensated appropriately. So I think those are 2 pieces. I think, the town's a couple of years into the roads program, and I think that's been a really good thing for the town to do. I believe we should continue that program. And that's probably, I mean, I guess we have these other potential capital expenditures. I don't feel like I have a full understanding of what those are, what the level are, what the priority are. So I'd like to see maybe a schedule of those so we can evaluate them. But back to roads, I think that's probably the big variable place. You know, these other things are kind of going to fall out as the budget gets put together, and then we're going to see how much we have to put towards the roads program. You know, I think that it's been really good that we're on this path. What I'd kind of like to see for the roads program, you know, a number of us are new, and I think it's also would be good for the public to be reminded about how this sort of how we got where we are, both you know, what we've done in the roads program, how roads are prioritized, and how the sort of there's the, you know, what we've done and what's next. And then the question is, how does that list of what's next get developed? Both in, you know, do we have a schedule of all the roads in town and what their current status is and how important they are, presumably based on usage, and then that, you know, sets their priority, and then how we come up with a budget number for them. So I think if we could get that laid out with the prioritized list of next steps in the roads program, as the rest of the budget's getting developed, then we can kind of put those two things together, see how they fall out and where we are. I think that would be, from my perspective, that would be a really helpful path forward.
All right, let's start with Seth then when we have him here, so we're not holding him up for any other discussions we're going to have. Mr. Hagar.
Hey guys, hope you all are well. Yeah, I mean, you know, I'm here. Don't change your agenda or alter your schedule for me, because I'm here at your beck and call. But I'd be more than happy to go over, you know, some basics on a little bit of history if that's what you want. I don't want to bore other members. I know Brian has a long history of what's going on. I also, you know, want to educate to the extent that you guys want to be on where we've been and how we're going to move forward, or what the plan is to move forward. Obviously subject to budget and approval and in your direction, but you know, where we were going at least last year. So if that's what you guys, you know, want, I'll take a couple minutes and go over that. Or if it's a different direction, then I'll go in whichever way whatever the board wishes.
Well, Seth, why don't you give them a quick overview of the capital project plan we've been working on?
Okay, yeah, perfect. So, you know, several years ago, the town really identified its needs to have a capital improvement plan that addressed infrastructure needs on a global basis. And so obviously that's how I got involved, and we developed a plan that, you know, long story short, there's many details, and I'd be more than willing to answer any, you know, very, very specific questions at any point in time. But just globally, the program is globally intended to be a 3-year program in which we take roads and we start them into the process, and at the end of the third budget cycle, third year, they are complete and we have a finished product from start to finish. So the first year that we enter a road into the program, all of the tree clearing and necessary large items to be removed out of the way for construction is completed. So whether that might be large ledge or trees, or, you know, any right-of-way issues that we may have, survey work that may need to be done, things like that. It's just the initial groundwork for what we need to do in order to move the project into the next step. After that's complete, the second year is where we turn into doing a more construction basis. So the road gets a reclaiming treatment where we just simply grind up the road, very similar to what we just did here on Academy Hill. It's a process that's been tried and true. It's very cost effective. It prevents, you know, it's a good happy medium to a full-blown road reconstruction. Instead of taking a road and completely removing all the material and rebuilding it at a fairly large expense, this method gives us the best of both worlds, where we're able to use prior investments from the town, reclaim the material, and try to reestablish a road base off of those funds and materials that were put there previously. We use that as a road base. We then apply a base layer of pavement, and we do all of the ditching and culvert replacement prior to that base pavement. The last year of the program, we then go in and put a surface coat of asphalt in place, and we do all the shoulder work associated. I also try to do signage and any finishing touches that we may need, safety improvements on that last year. So say, for example, for this upcoming budget cycle, I have some guardrail needs that I think are important. So I'll be putting those in the budget to be addressed as we move along that haven't been addressed in a long time. So those types of specific needs to each individual road happen in that last year. All in all, the program has been, I feel, very, very successful. We've had a pretty positive response to it, I feel. Obviously, there's always some questions as to how come this road and then that road. And to Rob's point, we don't necessarily have a sliding scale, because where I picked up on what roads need the attention most, where I picked up from was the town had already done a couple of bond projects in the past. So there were some areas that were quote unquote completed, or at least in better shape than other areas. So I immediately turned my attention to the areas that hadn't received any attention in a long time, and we've started to pick away in those areas. So whereas Lynch Road, for example, had a bond, several years back and was in pretty decent shape, I shied away from those areas and went to areas like West Hamlet Road, for example, that, according to many of the residents out there, hasn't seen anything in like 25, 30 years. So, and that's what we've continued to do. The only thing that I've added to that is I've looked at areas geographically, and we've tried to complete areas in a geographical nature. So, for example, Academy Hill project was a bonded project, but my predecessor had started in on Timber Lane and done some paving. We'd also done some paving on East Old County Road. So the next logical step then was to go down to Stonebridge Circle. So I've tried to, in a geographical area, complete projects so that we can essentially take neighborhoods and say that's done and complete and wrapped in a bow, and we can move on. That's really where the focus has been. I take that into consideration, along with, quite frankly, the condition of the road. So West Old County Road, for example, is in our capital plan. It was started last year. So the first phase of that process is going on right now. Currently, the tree trimming and some of those items that are out there are being removed and taken care of. Hopefully, with the funding of this year's budget, we'll then move on to the reclaiming and ditching and the culvert replacement. But West Old County Road geographically wasn't the area necessarily that needed to be gotten to next, but that road in the past has been neglected pretty hard. It's in pretty rough shape. So that I felt that it was important to address that before we have any further deterioration of that road, and we kind of take care of that. So we bumped out to the North Newcastle region, and then ultimately we'll be going back down south. Station Road is in need of some repair. It needs to be cleaned back, and it just needs to be fixed. There's some stuff out there that we need to do. So unfortunately, as much as I would love to stay in the Sheepscot Village, we've spent a fair amount of money on North Newcastle Road, and we've really achieved some decent progress on that to hold us over until the point where we can afford to fix the road in a more correct fashion. But at least we've got a decent surface layer on there. It's fully ditched. It's all already been cleaned. So West Old County Road, North Newcastle Road, a large majority of the roads out in the Sheepscot Village are dirt. Anyways, there's not a lot of hot top. Doesn't mean that they deserve any less attention. It just means that their program, per se, has got one less step than everybody else's. So it made natural sense to move down south where most of those roads are paved. That CIP plan is just capital improvement. That's where the CIP plan lives, and that's how we, in the past, have historically dealt with all of our CIP projects. In addition to that, under our regular maintenance budget, we take very smaller projects, very more specific, narrowed down, and we address those issues in our maintenance budget. So, for example, like last year, we took a 500-foot section of Academy Hill that we noticed was really starting to become problematic, and we addressed just that 500 feet. We put that under our regular maintenance because it wasn't a rebuild of the entire road. We weren't looking to do all the culverts. We weren't looking to take it to the same extent that a CIP plan item would be. It was just a maintenance. So throughout the years, I've developed several areas, point specific, that I thought was prudent to address, and we've done those. Another great example is the Glidden Street drainage infrastructure that we point specific addressed that one culvert and the connections for possible future drainage needs down there, but it was specific just to that culvert, not to all of Glidden Street. That's really where the crux of my budget is. Other than that, my budget is just the regular mundane, every operational thing that the town needs, i.e. catch basin cleaning, striping, signage, winter maintenance, paying for permits for snow discharge, salt. It's very, very, I'll say kind of boring, because that's just the things that we expend every year. Roadside mowing, things to that degree that we do on an annual basis just to maintain the infrastructure that we have. In the long story, that's really how we've developed our budget and how John and I have kind of shaped it over the last couple of years. It seems to work out pretty well. That direction on where we go and to what degree we do things has always been at the board level. I don't, as a department head for you, I don't have any reason to change, how I present my things or any, huge alterations to the course in which I would like to take. It's very, very much status quo. I'm not looking to light the world on fire by any new large expenditures. It's just very, very similar to what we've had in years past. The only thing that really influxes or changes my budget is, quite frankly, the length of the road. Obviously, a longer road requires more product and more time, and a shorter road requires less. So that changes my budget just based on pure size of the project. But other than that, scope, outlook, how we perceive to things, how we progress through things and perceive them to be a priority is unchanged.
Thank you, Seth. So you have to remember too, guys, this whole CIP plan, the previous boards in my 10.5 years have worked hard to get to this point so we can start doing capital projects to our roads. And the end goal is to get most of our roads back to a maintenance mode, which, we've literally ignored in town for years. We've done very few major projects till the past few years, and we've done like very little maintenance. Steve had some programs running when he was here for crack sealing and stuff, but it was never nearly enough. And you weren't going to get anything done with with a budget of $50,000 to $100,000. Wasn't getting anything done in town. So this is a program where we really need to see to keep moving the town forward and get our roads in good shape. This is a program you guys really need to keep supporting. And I realize it sounds like a lot of money we're throwing at this every year, but if we don't, you're going to be spending probably 3 times as much in 5 years from now to do these same projects. So because the roads will be that much worse. But that's my take on it. My last say. Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, Seth. So Station Road is the next road to start the program. Do you have the next couple of roads after that in mind, or if let's say we had a windfall and we could do a couple of projects? Do you know what those next priorities are?
That's a great question. Yes, I mean, I have my list of roads that I'd like to do. Again, staying with the neighborhood approach and trying to complete. So I would stay with Cochrane and Island and try to complete that area. However, depending on what the windfall was, if you're asking me about windfall and capital needs,
I'm not expecting it, but
one of the biggest things there's 2 big projects that the town is going to be faced in there. Well, I'll say 3 actually, but one's more of a different sort of need. In my opinion, on the road side of things, we have 2 big things that are going to be coming at us in the near future that we need to address. One is the drainage and infrastructure needs in and around the Glidden, Cross, Pleasant, Stewart Street area. That has to be addressed at some point here very soon. The second big need is going to be the Little Causeway Bridge on Pleasant Street. It's cracked, and we have to. That's going to be That's going to be a problem every year. It's getting worse, not getting better. I'm not suggesting that it's catastrophic right now, but there's a decent sized crack, and we're going to have to, we're going to have to look at that in the near future. And then lastly, the other need, this is as an outside, as a contractor for you and as a town representative, is we got to start having a conversation at some point in time about a sand shed. We're the only community around that doesn't have one. We don't protect that resource. It's a large resource, and I mean, at some point in time, if it isn't mandated upon us just due to what we have for environmental impact, it's going to become problematic. So that's going to be something we have to consider at some point in time when budgets allows and priorities. But from my standpoint, those would be the two big ticket items left to really go. Outside of bonding an issue, North Newcastle Road is still something in the back of my mind, but that's going to have to be the reason that we took the approach that we did last year, and the efforts that we have undertaken has been so to try to gain us, 7 to 10 years, to allow us this window to get Academy Hill paid off, absorb some budgeting, do some more planning. The town understands, or at least has been conveyed, that that's going to be a big ticket. North Newcastle Road reconstruction it's a big job. It's 3.5 miles. It's something that we're going to really have to look hard and serious at. But right now we're set for the next period of time to allow us that breathing room to be able to figure out how, when, if funding, and what our next move should be without it really crumbling underneath our feet.
Thanks.
Go ahead,
Hey,
Wanda.
Hey, Seth, I just have a different question since you mentioned the sand shed. This last snowstorm that we had, did you use a lot more salt out here? Our roads are literally white. And
Yeah.
they've been white ever since that storm.
Yeah, that's common. I'm all up and down Midcoast. That's the case. The reason for that is the concentration of salt. The application wasn't any different than what we did, but we only got a 1/4 inch of snow. The problem is that we had such low temperatures to begin with. It was cold that morning, about 20 degrees. Road temperatures were running 17 to 20 degrees. The application of salt was a little bit higher. There was only a 1/4 inch of snow, which typically gets consumed with the moisture of the snow when it starts to melt. So when that melted, it left the residue on the road.
Because
US
it literally looks like you used pure salt, but you didn't use anything different than usual.
No, we did. We've always used pure salt. We run pure salt. Anytime that we have a storm that inflects direct commute times, typically we have, with the school buses, running on the elementary school side now, we typically run salt usually during the commute times at the end of the storm, or as appropriate that we feel that's needed. So we ran straight salt out through there on our major collector roads, just like we've been doing for the previous 7 years. You just saw it more because it was only a 1/4 inch of snow. The application rate called for that, and the water in the snow didn't dissolve the salt purely, so you were left with a salt residue. It's just a matter of the way that it worked, not because it was any more or any less, or the application was any different. But yes, you're absolutely right. You did see it. We saw it on Route 1. We see it. I mean, we've seen it everywhere that we put salt down. It's just, if we got a little bit more snow and we didn't have to put quite so much out because it was a little warmer, then we'd have that cross a little bit better.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Go ahead, Tor.
Seth, question. So where we're trying to get caught up on sort of the major projects, capital improvement, where are we sort of in the cycle of getting caught up to where we get to a point where we're saying, okay, let's focus a little more on maintenance, and we can sort of loosen the belt a little bit? And what's that sort of timeline look like in years?
Yep, that's a great question. When we started this whole process, we looked at that pretty hard, and the cycle is scheduled to be about 20 years. So after 20 years, we should start to come back around. I would love to tell you, and to Brian's credit, he, as much as he supported this program, he's also been very physically responsible. And, in the past, the boards have always, they don't want to spend money where they don't need to be spent. I totally respect that. And that question is something that's always been said. Hey, when can we do that? And the reality is, the answer is you never will. But the degree in which you have to do things can be less and less. So as opposed to rebuilding a road. And I'll give you an example. Approximately 10 years thereabouts ago, prior to me, but the town bonded for Academy Hill Road to be reconstructed on the lower half. This was down through the Esch Corners, down by the church, the intersection, all the way back through. A contractor out of the Rockland area did the work. And what we're seeing now is Academy Hill Road on the lower section not totally fail, but you can see the road starting to move in the extent that your travel lanes are starting to wear, the shoulders are starting to break down just a little bit. It's not a catastrophic failure. So the work that you did 10 years ago now can be treated with more of a surface treatment as opposed to a full-blown reconstruction method. And that's where I want to try to get the town, so that when you go back to West Hamlet in 20 years, you're not redoing the culverts because the culverts are all done. You don't have to do a lot of the treescaping because the treescaping is maybe just some minor brush work, but you just have to resurface the road, do some ditching and some minor maintenance. So you still will have that expenditure. It should be a little bit less, but you're always going to have money to come back around on these roads. I'm just hopeful that in 20 years, when you go back to West Hamlet Road, your degree of expenditure is going to be significantly less than what you would have had to have been had you ignored it or just put a surface layer on it and not done anything underneath. That's what we're seeing with this type of an approach. Jefferson has recently started to do it. A lot of the areas with more significant public works departments are kind of taking this because, quite frankly, towns can't afford to do full-blown reconstruction. At the same time, we don't want to waste taxpayers' money. So it's got to be something that is in the middle, financially responsible, yet still gives us a longevity. My goal is that a 20-year cycle, you'll be able to see those dividends, even though you still cost you money, it'll be far significantly less than what you would have normally had to pay.
And just a follow-up question. So reconstruction, can you just give me just sort of a brief idea of what reconstruction is?
Yep.
You know,
So on Academy Hill this year, we did portions of that road where we totally reconstructed it. So from the railroad tracks all the way up through to the gym, we dug down approximately 20 inches, laid fabric, all new gravel, new base layer pavement, new surface layer pavement. We took out all the clay, we reconstructed that because we found that the material underneath the road was insufficient enough to allow drainage to substantially keep that roadbed dry. There were other areas of the road that we just did the reclamation process. When you rebuilt the lower portion of Academy Hill, you did the same thing, dug out all the old material and put in all new gravel and rebuilt it literally from the ground up. That whole layer of how we construct roads is typically done by 2 different types of gravel and 2 different types of pavement. But that cost typically runs $1 million to $1.5 million a mile. That's what we're seeing average DOT wise. That's unreasonable. I mean, there's no way I could come to you guys. I mean, we did West Hamlet Road. That was just about a mile. And John will have to help me out because my memory isn't that good. But let's just say I'm going to say budget wise, 250 grand, John, something like that. There, so we totally reclaimed, ditched, ledge, culverts, tree cleaned, paved, the whole thing for about a quarter of what it would have cost to fully reconstruct it. And yet we got a product that we're seeing very good results in other areas that should last you 20 years, which is great, as opposed to taking that money and overlaying the road, just put 1.5 inches of material of hot mix on, and 5 years later seeing all the cracks come back up through, the base wasn't changed, the culverts are heaving, and then to say, oh, this culvert failed because we didn't replace it, so now you got to go cut a hole in the road and patch that in. It's just, in my opinion, it's backwards, and you're putting good money on a bad problem, and you're not really advancing the infrastructure in the town. You're simply band-aiding it. And I understand there's a point that you need to do that financially. If you can't afford it, you can't afford it. But if we have the means and we're able to do it, this is a much better financial and stronger economic tool, because your overall strength of the infrastructure in your town is increasing on a regular basis as opposed to deteriorating. We've made some pretty significant changes over the last few years, I think it's pretty evident that, we're getting around and seeing some good things happen. So the program as a whole has a merit. It does take commitment to it. Brian's absolutely right. And I know it sounds like a broken record, but this isn't something that you see once and then go, oh, great, we're done. It's over. It's a heartburn because you have to be committed to it, and you have to you're in it for the long haul. It isn't an immediate satisfaction. Yes, you get to see that road, but it's going to take a while before we get to everybody's neighborhood and everybody gets to enjoy a new road and everybody can see their tax dollars working for them. It's just a process. It's not because we don't want to be everywhere. It's simply just a process of which we can get to.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Joel.
And when we started this whole new system that we're working under right now, the original goal was to really start putting money aside every year to fund the capital projects. That was something that we had talked about. That part we haven't really been doing, where we've been putting away big chunks of money for North Newcastle Road per se, so that when it needs to be completely rebuilt, we do it. So in some aspects, we've already kind of cut back from our original goals. And that's just something that the board needs to understand and just consider, whether it makes sense to enter back into that or not. But we've been really trying to play catch up, I feel like. So it's been hard to put even more money away, like we should, because of the situation that we're in. So.
And I'll add on to the Joel, just so the rest of the board that doesn't know, for the other members. I believe what he's referring to is last year I had proposed to put $200,000, for example, away into a savings account for North Newcastle Road, just as a potential, hey, every year if we can just tuck a little bit into this account, at the end of 5 years we'll have, $1 million, a little over $1 million. That at least get us a third of the way, and we can have that. The board decided to cut that and use that money other ways. The road program still maintained, but it was a legit cut. I mean, at that time it just couldn't be done. It made sense, and that's why they pay you folks the big bucks to make these hard decisions. But that's what Joel, I believe, is referring to in the past. This year, I will tell you, I haven't proposed that, only because it did meet some resistance last year. So I didn't put that in my budget when John asked for it. I don't have any savings or anything allocated. My numbers this year are just needs and what the program specific desires are.
Anything else for Seth? Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, just can you explain how you budget the projects? How you come up with budget numbers?
That's a trade secret. If I tell you, I'd have to, kill you. No. The budget process is simple. It's just, to be quite frank with you, it's a lot of experience. But I develop a line item budget for each individual project based on what I know the needs are. So when it comes time to reclaiming, base paving, culverts, I literally take, I can show you my worksheet, but I might have 7, 8, 9, 12 different line items. Each line item I have to figure out a quantity for, and then assign a unit cost for, and that totals what the total project is. But on average, most projects have anywhere between 10 to 12 line items. And that's just for me literally taking every project. Tor probably can relate to this. I take the project from the ground up, and I develop a spreadsheet, and I develop a budget based on, I need this much for gravel, and I need this much for base pavement, and I need this much for tree cutting, and I need, and I take all those items, and that's how I develop my budget. My unit costs typically are derived from MDOT standards and what I see the market going for. Quite frankly, we're involved in a lot of different markets. I'm very, very intimately familiar with what going rates are, and I'm very, very intimately involved in the bid process, and I see where things are going. So I'm able to take that knowledge and apply it to these unit costs. And I'm also able to see expenditures in the future. For example, right now we've all seen, and I'm not in any way, shape, or form want to get into any type of political discussion, but with the change of administration, we're seeing petroleum move a little bit. So that is truly affecting, what we're seeing for projections into the spring for asphalt. We're having discussions on a regular basis with our suppliers, and we're seeing that. But for the budget cycle, it allows me to see those trends and then prepare accordingly so that I'm in on budget. To the one degree, I don't like to toot my own horn. I try not to be overconfident or cocky when it comes to things, but I try very, very hard to stick to a budget. I think John can attest that most of my budget stuff that I've come in is usually pretty spot on. We very rarely have any underages. We don't come in unless we see a change in a project or we do more than what was originally expected. We're usually pretty darn close to right on budget.
Anything else for Seth? All right, Seth, appreciate your time.
Yeah.
As always.
I'm here. I'm here for the board. Obviously, I'll be working with John as my direct boss. But if you guys have questions, please funnel them through him. I have no secrets whatsoever. I can get you any information. I will be more than willing to help in any aspect. Brian, I would personally just like to take a second and say thank you very much. I've enjoyed working with you. I'm sorry to see you go. I wish you very well on your new endeavors, and I'll definitely will miss working with you. So congratulations on your newfound retirement, and I wish you well in the future for sure.
Thank you, Seth. I appreciate that. It goes both ways. It's been great work with you for these years. But you're going to miss my early morning text when I'm like, have you salted the roads yet?
It's all good. You still text away. I got broad shoulders. I'm fully prepared for any and all of that.
I'll be across the bridge for a little bit, so you'll be ignoring me.
Oh no, I love my friends in Damascotta just as much.
All right, thank you, Seth.
All right, guys, be safe, and as always, we work through the process of this budget. And if you have any questions at any time, just please feel to reach out.
Thanks, Seth.
Thanks.
Thanks.
So, John, probably to help start with your budget process, we probably need to talk raises. Be a good place to start because that predicts a lot of his budget lines that he really can't move with with FICA and payroll and retirement funds and everything. So what are you guys thinking percentage on raises this year? And we pretty much, I think we've always done what we've done, Joel, 2.5 to 3% pretty much consistently.
Pretty much, yeah.
I kind of think it's kind of hard to talk about that if we don't truly know what the end budget's going to be. In the sense, I know we have to start somewhere, but I think Rob said that the town's worked really hard this year. Well, everybody's worked really hard this year, and a lot of people aren't doing so well. And so that's kind of always on my mind. So I don't know. I mean, I don't want to say we don't do anything, but I think we need to be cautious too, because I would like to say things. I would like to see us, kind of keep things kind of flat for the townspeople this year, because this thing ain't over yet, and there's a lot still to come. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's one of those tough things. I know some companies have been doing raises this year. Some have held back. Some have been doing bonuses versus raises. All depends on the separate companies, where they're at financially, whether it's healthcare or industry or whatever, or construction. So, Joel.
I know from my business, and I think it's similar in municipal stuff right now, is that it's pretty competitive. And you want to retain people and you want to keep good people. And I think we have good people right now. And it's something I'm doing in my business right now, is giving more raises, giving more compensation, because I appreciate, my crew, and I have a great crew right now, that I couldn't do this without. also just, just to keep retaining. And I know that there's a lot of people out there right now that have a lot to do and they don't have the people to do it. And so I'd suggest, at least what we did last year, which I can't remember if it was 2 or 2.5%, but I'd start there anyway, just as a placeholder.
So CPI, do you have any idea what that is? For 2021, I mean, usually that runs around 2.5%, 3%.
Yeah, so the Social Security COLA adjustment is 1.3. The CPI Northeast, I'll get it for you.
Sure.
Let me get, yeah. So.
Rob?
I think Joel makes a good point. I mean, having any turnover easily negates the difference in a percent or two of raise. So that's a good point to keep in mind, I think.
Yeah, you also have to look at, but even if you're talking 3%, it's minuscule dollars really in our overall budget.
Yeah.
It does help to retain, like Joel said, retain employees, and everybody's happy when they get a little bump in their check. It's you lose half of it to the government, but that little extra cup of coffee every week is nice.
CPI for Northeast urban is 1.4%. Of course, the thing with the CPI and the Social Security number, they both, because the year was so strange, you had, the first part of the year, it was up and then down and then up and then, so the year over year numbers are a little funky because you can go month by month in these and they're all over the place. So I think a lot of places are maybe moving away from using the standards like that. We always hope we always use TPI or the Social Security number as a benchmark to start from and then work from there. But this year it's so hard because everything's, who the heck knows what's going on, It's.
I mean, I mentioned CPI. It's just something to keep in mind. It is some kind of indicator, I think, but yeah, I mean, things are crazy, and as a CPI doesn't mean anything when you go to the grocery store and try to buy groceries for your family. It's the numbers keep going up, and God help you if you have to build a house right now, because it ain't cheap. But so it's an indicator, but it's got to be used loosely, as I say. I think I guess in my mind I would sort of look back at what the trend's been over the past maybe 3 to 5 years. I'm kind of more concerned about what that is than CPI. But I agree with Joel and Rob. I think I think there's got to be something there, and I think we got to retain talented, good help. So.
And let me just add to this. I wasn't expecting necessarily that any of you would come down to a 2.225%. I don't think I'm really looking for some specificity. I expect that I'm going to come up with a number, after listening to what you guys are saying tonight, the 5 of you are saying tonight. I'm going to come back with a number, and then as Wanda was saying, you're going to have the full picture then. And so I don't think anyone would, I'm not, for example, saying, oh, well, any decision you're making tonight without any numbers, we're going to lock it in stone, put it on the warrant and run with it. I think the idea is really to kind of, it's a vision thing, it's like, John, go head in that direction and eventually you'll find maybe what we're looking for. And if I get halfway down there and I'm not anywhere, by the time I actually hand you the papers, you'll see what the numbers add up to. and you say, no, this way, you know. So this is really a starting point for me, just to say, you know, go in that direction. And if the direction is, let's use kind of roughly what we did the last couple of years, but hey, John, oh, by the way, in 6 weeks when we see this and we put the full picture together and we see what's going on, we say, geez, we can't afford that, or we can afford more than that, or whatever. You know, this is really just meant as a starting point for me. So I don't want you to feel any sort of stress or pressure to kind of lock you in. I'm not, you know, saying, you know, this is exactly what it is. I wouldn't tell the employees this is what it is. I think this is really more about just kind of sending me off into the wilderness in the right direction, so I don't, you know, fall over a cliff or something that, you know, isn't what you guys are generally kind of looking for. You know, if it's 0 to 3%, I can work between that, or if it's 1.4% or whatever, you know, that's just a number. It's in a formula, and I can calculate that really easily. So, you know, I don't want you to feel like you need to, you know, go too deep in this, or you know, really, you know, have 3 people that say that. That's not really. I'm just looking for general consensus topics, really. So, if you want, I can go with something that, you know, unless there's any other kind of direction that the 5 of you want to give. I've heard some different ideas here, and I think I can take some of that back and put that to work. So unless there's anything else you guys want to share on that topic, I think I have some direction.
All right, Joe had his hand up first.
I would just say, I mean, I looked over the year to dates. I looked at where we are right now, where the trends are looking. Interesting thing with the year to dates is the revenues, because last year was the first year that we actually upped that. So if we go over by a lot, that's a really big thing, because every year that I've been on the board, except for last year, we've underestimated that quite a bit. And that's part of where our fund balance really came from, was by not overestimating that, kind of underestimating where that was. And so last year we hit this point where it was like, we've been underestimating this every year. We didn't actually expect COVID to hit, but it's actually still been a good year on the revenue front. So as far as the town is concerned, I think we're in a good place there. We haven't added a lot to the overall budget. I mean, we have a bond that we're paying off this year, but you know, that we're going to start paying on this year. But other than that, we've been keeping everything pretty tight. All the projects we've spent has been out of reserves. And I think if we just sort of let you roll with it as we have done for the past few years, and then see where that comes out, and then sort of maybe trim back and decide where we can you know, take things. But it looks to me, I mean, in reading it, it looks to me like we're in a really good spot, and that's what I took from it. So that would just be my thought, is just to you know, start working it within that mind, you know. And if you start seeing something where it really looks like there's some red flags popping up and it seems to be going crazy, then you know what to do then. So
Go ahead, Wanda.
No, I was just going to say, I certainly want to retain good help too. I, for one, believe me, understand what it's like not to, you know, to try to maintain good people. And I'm perfectly happy with having John kind of look at what we've done over the last few years, look at the bigger picture. I do want in the next week or so, hopefully, John, to find some time to get in and talk to you too. I haven't had time to do that, but I'm certainly happy with that. I certainly don't want anybody to think that, you know, I don't think anybody deserves a raise. I don't mean that. I just have a hard time, like you said, coming up with a number when that's like the first number we're talking about. And I don't know how you do that. I don't know how you do that. So, but I trust you. I trust you.
Thank you. That makes me feel good. I just got to put a number in a cell somewhere in Excel, and then it just does everything for me. So I get the easy job. I just put numbers in, and it's magic. But no, yeah, and I appreciate that. I think yeah, I think we are in a good place, and I think that once everything's together, it will make a lot more sense. And that's the main thing, right? Is so you can see the whole picture. Last year we had a really a different kind of process. We talked about goals of what we wanted to see, and I just want to make sure. I don't want you to feel like you get to the end. Sometimes you can feel like it's tough. It's new for a lot of you guys. It's new, It's like, okay, well, what am I asking for? And I've never been to the end, so I don't know what I'm looking to ask for in the end. But the reality is, it's that kind of general vision thing of this is where we want to do, and then all of us recognizing that in a month, 2 months, when we see with these numbers how they total, we may come to completely different conclusions. And 2 years ago, we had a budget process. We went through the whole thing, got to like 3 weeks before, and then the brakes got thrown on it, and everything went haywire. We ended up with a completely different budget 3 weeks later. So that happens. I'd like to avoid that as much as I can. But, understanding and all due respect to you guys, there's only just so much because you haven't done this before for many of you. So, hey, it's a long process. We'll get through it, and at the end there'll be a number and it'll add up and the town will vote on it and they'll say yes or no. And that's our budget. It's, we're going to be okay, either way. So this is my rah-rah, speech to the board, but, it is true though. It can seem daunting, but, this is the process we have. And, I think we're going to, as Joel said, those revenues give me a lot of comfort in knowing that we're going in a good place. Let's hope that state funding keeps up. Let's hope that there's federal help for municipalities and states. That will also all help us. But just looking at our little corner of the universe, we're in a good place going into this budget year. And we can step back from the table then, and then when we see the numbers, then we can, worry about it then a little bit. So.
Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, I think in the last couple of years, in a way, the board has it's been a little easier because you could just have the goal to say we want to keep the mill rate constant. Well, we know we're doing the revaluation, so the mill rate is not going to be comparable. It's almost certainly going to be significantly lower. So we don't have that as a goal. So I think that we want to, on the one hand, I think we know with our roads, we basically have unlimited needs. We could spend, 10 times our budget on roads, and we wouldn't be finishing that 20-year, accelerating that 20-year plan all that much. So we can't do that. So I think we want to do as much as we can while keeping our total expenditures under control. And so I think that, in a way, as John said, with that in mind, once we put it all together, then we'll have enough ability to say at the margin, okay, we can do this, we can't do that, but I think that our, in a way, our simple goal, we don't have this year.
All right, go ahead, Tor, and I'll get you in a minute.
So yeah, I think, I guess where my mind is right now, of course that will change, but I'm thinking, just conceptually, we only have so many dials that we can turn here, in the, on the big, sort of the big aspect, not line by line, but on sort of the major groupings, and so that's a balanced routine. And then, revenue. So my question, John, is on revenue. Is there an over under every year, or is that kind of an outlier, just a mystery? Like when do you sort of feel comfortable about what revenue is going to look like?
Well, revenues are usually quite the dartboard toss, honestly. So that's why you're always very conservative, because you always want to be on the plus side, right? That you're always over collecting, which you're going to bring in. as Joel said, you know, the first few years here, I was trying to kind of maintain what we had always done and what the board has done in terms of what I was proposing. And last year, I just said, or 2 years ago, I was like, okay, this is crazy. Like, we're going so far over this number. We can't in good faith do that. And while it was great because it was building up our fund balance, the downside was that really we weren't adequately capturing what we could be spending. And you can argue if you underreport your revenues or underreport, but under budget your revenues, you're overtaxing. So the idea was trying to get to a closer number on those revenues. That then allowed us to have a tighter handle on what we really had in hand. The other thing is, of course, is we are started having more cash in the bank. You know, I think when I started here, we were a little over $450,000 in terms of our fund balance. Now we're as of 6/30/19, we're at 1.6 million. So that's not to say that I brought $1 million in or that we underreported, but the issue was it's a couple things. The economy's done better. Our excise tax has done better. Maybe we're underspending. Maybe we've also had one year where we actually held back our capital needs in roads because we weren't ready. We didn't feel like we were ready when we didn't have a plan, and so that kind of got lumped in on a second. You know, and it kind of got pushed ahead to another year. So it put us kind of in a 2 years in one. So that would be 2 years ago. That might have been 2 years ago we started to kickstart everything. So it's a long answer to your question, Tor, but I think what I'm trying to get at is saying I'm trying to get a little bit closer to that revenue number. The thing that really threw it is, at least for last year to this year, excise tax is the biggest elephant in the room. But when you don't collect from mid-March until the end of June, it was like that's like our biggest time for excise tax collections. And we had to, and so it completely, everything is, you know, sideways. So I do think, but we're definitely still on an upward trend when it comes to, if you kind of equalize that for what that is, we're still on an incredible upward rocket on that. The problem with excise taxes, that's usually the canary in the coal mine for when the economy slows down, because that's when people start, that's the first thing you see in terms of municipal receipts. You know, people are still paying their property taxes generally. They're usually, you're usually a 6 month lag or what have you. They're escrowed. But with your excise tax, that's, hey honey, do you want to go buy, should we go buy a new car this weekend, or do we get a used, one down the street for $5,000? That's the immediate impact that we would see. So, when things are great, excise is amazing, and that's the biggest impact to our revenues. When things are starting to go bad, that's when you want to be very conservative. So we've been riding the wave of that a bit. As long as we stay conservative enough and stay below that number, I think we're going to be okay. In terms of my sense of things, like going into this year, what I'm going to probably suggest is we do something that's a percentage multiplier of FY19, rather than trying to go off of the 20 or where we are to date on the 21 numbers, and then work from there. And then the other one, and you and I talked about this the other day, is a little bit, was that the school revenues. That's also that's considered town revenue. The subsidy for the kids that go to Lincoln or wherever they go, that comes in as a municipal revenue. So as the state can kind of ride that wave, and sometimes, they're very generous and sometimes less so, that can have a big impact on our bottom line too. So anyway, that's a long way of talking about revenues, but it's I think that can give you a little bit of sense of where we ride on that train.
Juan, do you have a question? Go ahead.
Yeah, actually, a comment first and a question. I just want to say the excise bank got a little bigger last week when I came in and wrote the check for Roger's new pickup. Are you about to die?
Thank you.
I was going to say.
Thank you.
I knew it was going to be a big check, but I didn't know it was going to be that big a check. So I'm just saying. But anyway,
we thank you and Roger. I should say that before you go any further. Thank you to the two of you.
But one thing about capital is we look at the capital budget, and we do still have a lot of road work to do. But I've only been on this board for a little over a year, but we talk a lot about buildings, and we haven't done. You've mentioned that when we came on. There's some work that needs to be done to buildings, and I think you can't forego the buildings and do it all on the road. So I think, I think this year we got to start putting some of that in there too. And if we have to forego some of the roads for some of the buildings, but we got to save them both. So, I mean, I think we really have to look at what needs to be done in some of those projects too. I mean, just since I've been on, we've talked a lot about, Joel's talked a lot about what the outside of the town hall needs. And that's not to talk about the firehouse. And then Seth brings out the salt shed, which, like, he's right. I mean, every other town has one. We're right on the bay, I mean, I can't imagine that's a huge, how much that would cost, but we keep talking about these things, but we haven't done anything other than the construction projects for COVID, which we did do a fair amount, but we haven't done stuff to like exterior parts of the buildings and things like that. And I think I would like to see us start to kind of chip away at that a little bit this year too, as we go into this process.
Yeah, that is a major thing. We've had choices in the past, what to fund, where to put our money, what was falling apart faster, the roads or the buildings.
Yeah.
So, we chose
They're all
roads.
falling apart now.
All falling apart now. They are. Sheepshead Fire Station needs a ton of work. We've been talking, probably 50 grand to get that building back in a good, decent shape. I won't say good shape, but decent shape. And because you've got to start looking at that building for the next truck that's going to go in there that might not fit the current garage doors. So, stuff like that, you guys have to start looking at. And, our town office is in need, as Joel's been telling us for 5 years now. So, but back to the revenue side, just so you guys get a little history on why else. I won't say we under budgeted revenue over the years, but when we started, one of our former governors every year was like, oh no more revenue sharing. So all of a sudden we had $80,000 in our budget saying, we don't know if we're going to get any of it. So we had to take that kind of out of our revenues and build up for that. And then as we were moving forward and actually getting some money in the bank, the boards made a decision to start paying off our debt. So, and as we paid off our debt, we chose in the next year not to eliminate that out of our budget, but to continue raising those funds to continue paying off further debt and allowing us to build our general. So that's the two big things. That's why our general built faster, I would say, than what anybody would have proposed. And then, like I said, excise tax on vehicles. People have been buying cars left and right, even through COVID. People have been buying vehicles. So that's just a little history for why, where we were. And then when John's, we talked about it last year before about, okay, let's start coming back to actuals, what we actually have for revenue, and get it more in line, because we no longer have a governor threatening to take away our revenue sharing, and one that wants to give us some more and actually wants to start funding our schools a little more. So, but that's kind of a little bit of history on it. Anything else on current budget process? John, you need any more guidance for which way to go on stuff, or?
No, I think I've heard. I mean, unless there's anything else that you guys feel like in terms of direction or goals that you want to ensure. As Wanda said, it, buildings is really kind of foremost on my mind. Exterior, the town office is, there's a lot of issues, and I think in terms of where we're going, that it needs to be a focus. We did put money aside this year for the exterior that we haven't spent as of yet. So there's just something to start with there as well. But I think we're in the beginning of a, we're in the beginning of a long conversation in terms of how to appropriately take care of the buildings that we have. And so I think that's a good thing. With a point where you had to make the choice. Now hopefully we're going to be able to build budgets that do both, which would be a novel concept. So do what we can.
Rob?
Yeah, I would just add, I think as you're developing the budget, if there are logical places, levers that we can say a little bit more here, a little bit less here, and these are the implications of making those changes. You know, I think would be helpful for us as we evaluate the budget.
Tor?
Well, I'm not sure if this is going to come up in the meeting, and I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but my thought was if it sounds like we're wrapping up this portion of our agenda, what is the next? It's end of January. What's the timeline sort of in the bigger picture moving up to, whatever we're going to do for town meeting this year, securing our warrant. And then what is our next few meetings look like? And that's going to take us into mid-February. Mid-March.
So the nice thing is that you don't have to talk about budget for a little bit. You can talk about other things for a meeting or two. What I would suggest is that you give myself and Seth and Clayton some time, as I proposed last time at your last meeting, some between 2 and 4 weeks. So if there were strong feelings one way or the other, it'd be great. I would probably urge closer to the 4 than the 2. I'm spending a lot of time working on some other things, trying to get our harbor committee going, and we have an appeals board meeting, and trying to help Shelley with some of the code stuff and keep that going. So 4 would probably be better than the 2. But the idea would be to come back and then have a fully throated, budget, start the budget process. We do have 2 members of our finance committee. We do have 2 members who are on that group. We do not have enough for a quorum, however. So we may need to either find individuals who wish to serve enough so they could have their own committee, or I might propose that we simply invite those 2 individuals to join the group, join your meetings. And the way that you have in the past, it's taken a number of different forms, but the last few years when we had members of that group, they would attend the meetings and simply act as another voice in the room. No one's in a room now, I guess we're all online or whatever it is. But anyway, another voice, another opinion, another a place of opinion, rather than an individual group that would go and meet and have their own budget, perhaps, which is really the way that I think the budget committee had operated, the finance committee had operated. So if we only have 2 members, maybe have them, join this Zoom, and when we have those budget discussions, they offer those thoughts as well. That's a thought. Right now, we don't have enough for committees, so they don't have any authority on their own. But I think it's important that we try to broaden our scope of who's involved. And certainly we have an ordinance that calls for some involvement. So unless we have a quorum, they really don't have any role. So that seems punitive and really not in keeping with the ordinance. The other thing I'd say, so going back, so in 4 weeks, the idea would be have a budget and to work through that process until you have agreement amongst the 5 of you in terms of what that budget is. Now, the difficulty is in past years, we would be able to say, well, we kind of want to, this is where we want to end up with our mill rate. We're never going to be able to do that. So we all know right off the bat that's gone. The other piece, though, is that, oftentimes you wait for the schools. So the schools are usually not coming to their budget numbers until early April, sometimes, in preparation for their typical, again, this is where things get weird, their typical open meetings, their open annual town meetings that they hold in mid-May. Now, Are they going to be able to have an open town meeting? Are they going to be? So this is now we're onto the, you always try. Remember when we used to do the NLPC and we'd say, okay, we got to build the agenda, the kind of calendar back from election day. Well, we don't know what election day is. We don't know what it looks like. So that's the hard thing is I'm kind of suggesting taking what we know, which is, okay, give me a month to put together some numbers. We know probably there will be some sort of vote in June. If it has to be secret ballot, using somewhat the framework of what the governor allowed us to do a year ago, we could have that warrant locked in about 30 days before. So that would mean early mid-May. So that gives us 2.5 months to get to the bottom of a budget. But the first thing is you need me to do my, have numbers so that you can really have something you're comfortable with. And then we're going to be, I think, in midst of trying to get to a number the 5 of you have consensus on and approve of, while the legislature is also concurrently trying to figure out what the rules are by which we can have this approved. Having said all that, the rules are still in place as long as the state of emergency is in effect, that we can operate under our prior year budget into the new fiscal year. So if for some reason, and I don't see why this would be the case, we could continue to operate into July using the current budget lines of this existing budget. But nobody wants to see that happen. And I think we can avoid that because there's a number of ways which we can have a special town meeting or an annual town meeting. But given what we heard, I think, from residents last fall, if we can do something with minimal contact and a check off, fill out the blanks, absentee ballot or whatnot, I think that seems to be a preferred way to go. So if that's where we end up and we can get your budgets in your hands, you got 8 weeks, 10 weeks to get through it, which I think is more than enough time, should be more than enough time. Schools will get their numbers locked in, and I think there'll be more than enough time for you to put together a warrant and get it on a ballot potentially in early June. So I'm sorry if that's it's more confusing than I'd like it to be, honestly, but I just want to be clear about there's so many caveats, and usually we have a very clear picture of what the direction is, but my guess is there will be votes in the legislature and governor and action by the state government that will impact our timeline. Hopefully we have more time to deal with that than we did last year. I know for you, Tor and Rob, you guys weren't, party to that, but for Wanda, Brian, Joel, and I, there was a lot of uncertainty as we were working through our budget in April and May because we didn't know what they were going to allow us to do. Ultimately, these guys, the 3 of them said, no, we're going to go ahead with a secret ballot vote. But it was, some people did their budgets in August. Some people, it was all over the map. So I'm thinking we'll have a better answer, but the legislature just started their work. I think it's still going to be some time before there's some certainty there. But if I have my numbers a month, then at least you guys can at least have a number you're happy with on the municipal side, and we'll work from there.
Sounds good.
Another thing that's going to snag you guys this year will be CLC ambulance service. I think their budget number is going up, and well, I know it is. So you guys are going to have to start working with the other 5 towns to come up with a way to make that a viable budget for them too. It's going to cost the town a little more money, I think, over the next couple of years to do it, but it's something you guys are going to have to grab and run with and get the other towns on board with. It'll be fun after the last meeting we had. It should be fun, huh, Joel?
Yeah, it should be fun. When Brian and I were in that meeting together, the budget seemed pretty bare bones, and so we kind of had a quick little discussion about it, and we're suggesting that we appropriate a little bit more money in case they have a need and need to come back for more money, because that was a discussion that they had thrown out there, so that we wouldn't have to have a special town meeting to fund our ambulance service. So,
All right, anything else on budget? Buildings, roads? All right.
All of,
and
All right, next thing is streetlight purchase from CMP. Looks like we have a bill of sale.
Yeah, so this is, this is part of the conversion and all that to the LEDs. But this is the bill of sale. This is the portion of it. This isn't more than what we anticipated. This is exactly what we anticipated. But this is the actual bill of sale of us purchasing the lights that are currently on the poles right now. We purchased those and then they're replaced with the new fixtures. So this is kind of the last step before the new ones go up. And right now it's expected that they should be in next week and installed beginning next week. So you may actually start to see some of them installed in Damascotta. I think they're already started. That's what the bucket, you may have seen the bucket truck that's out in front of the town office. That's the contractor. They're based up in northern Maine, and they have the truck that's parked in our parking lot. We have not purchased a bucket truck. There's, this is not part of the process where I'm going to go out there and start changing lights or, that's not part of the deal. But anyway, just so everyone understands.
I thought you purchased that. We're going to see it in the line item for Christmas lights on the Christmas tree next year.
Okay, well, wait a second. Now we're on to something.
That's a good idea, isn't it?
That's a great idea. I think if Carolyn had thought of that, she would have done it first. So, no, Shelly's going to drive me around. I'm going to be up in the bucket doing the lights.
That's scary. Go ahead,
so
Rob.
I see there are two documents. One's the bill of sale, and another's the basically agreement to have this arrangement where we own equipment on their pole.
That's right.
And it looked like they both have schedules, but the schedule for the second was a little bit longer. Is that because we're adding lights? I didn't try to look at them, but one of them looked a little bit longer. Like the one for the operating agreement looked a little bit longer than the bill of sale. So are we adding light fixtures? I know there was some question, there was.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. We are adding light fixtures. But this was the listing that they provided us for both should be identical. So I'll go over this with the client, the agent tomorrow, just to make sure, but they should have been the same.
It looks like, one was 2 pages and the other one went on to a third page or something like that. I don't remember, but it looked like the operating was longer.
I'll take a look at it. Sorry.
So my only question is CMP going to come put the lights on my road before we buy them? There's 3 of them listed here on Old Sheepshead Road. So I'm trying to find them. So I'm just curious if we're buying, if they're going to put them up.
I think, your Old Sheepshead Road, I think is what
we are. Old Sheepshead Road.
No, I don't think they're going to get there. Not until you sell the house, and then they're going to put them up.
Probably.
Yeah, and they are going in different locations so anyway. Yeah.
All right, so John, you're just looking for a motion to give us power to sign this?
Please, and thank you.
So move.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Joel. All right, any further discussion? All in favor? Passes 5-0. All right, and sadly, we have a resignation from Jim Brinkler from the planning board. I don't know how many years Jim's been on there now.
Yeah, I don't know. A ways. Going a ways back for sure.
It's got to be almost since he was a selectman, I think.
Yep, he's a selectman. But yes, Jim's done a lot for the town of Newcastle, and we appreciate all his time, and that's been so thank him for his time and effort he's given to that group for many, many, many years.
You didn't have to get done just because I was, So.
Nobody else get any ideas?
All right, so that gives us what, 1 or 2 openings on planning board then?
Two
2.
openings. Yeah.
So we are looking for people. You
Yes,
guys
we
have to
are.
hit up everybody you know.
If you're interested, come see me.
Who's on the planning board now? I know it's Ben and Kevin and
Nick.
Buck. What's his name?
Yep, Nick Buck.
Dick. Yeah, Nick.
David Hewitt and Peter McNaughton is an alternate.
Okay.
So we have one, I believe, one alternate and one full member seat available. And they can meet with 3 because the alternate positions are not considered part of the quorum, but obviously we want to have more if we can. We also have 3 vacancies on the appeals board. There was an appeals board meeting on Wednesday night. There was one person I tried to twist their arm, but they were not so interested. Tough to fit into schedules, but with the Zoom meetings, it's so easy. So as this is my advertisement to people in Newcastle watching, folks, it's so easy. Just turn on your camera and do the thing, and you're out, and you can have your cup of coffee or whatever right there with you, and you don't have to come into any sort of meeting. So simple, easy. We'd love to have you, and we have trainings right up there. So yeah, so 3 on the appeals board, 2 on the planning board, and certainly the finance committee as well.
Moving on to 7-1 town warrant for $268,911.41. Have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Yeah.
Thank you, Wanda. Discussion? Didn't see anything that jumped out at me.
I just had
Go ahead,
one,
Joel.
one thing that I saw that reminded me of something. The paying our MMA membership. When I went to the MMA training with Wanda I guess it was a year ago. Wow, crazy.
Yeah,
Just like
a little over a year ago. Yeah.
yeah. But when we went, they were talking because that was run by MMA, and they were talking about a lot of the online resources that are available if you're a member. And it was one of those things that I've been meaning to look into and figure out and try and get a login or whatever so that we could use, because there's a lot of legal resources on there, different things that you can look up. So I don't know if that's something that you could set up for people who are interested in it, John, or how that works, or if that's beyond our tier of.
No, I wouldn't say, no, it's definitely not beyond. No, I mean, anyone can have a login through the MMA's website. I think everyone individually can have that. The differentiation is really in terms of who can speak to legal services. That's usually the one that's kind of the, okay. You don't want to have every planning board member and every so sometimes you'll see that authority is somewhat delegated to chair people or what have you. But in terms of, like, as you said, the resources, the manuals, the historical documents, there's a ton on that website. You're absolutely right, and there's a lot more there that can benefit us. So let me look into that in terms of what we need. I know it's not something that I can set up on behalf, kind of on behalf of the town, and then set up all of our users. But let me see what we need to do. So if there is interest, I think I'd probably, on an individual basis, if any of you have interest or what have you, let me know, so at least I know how many people I'm kind of sending their way, and then we can work from there.
Yeah, I thought it sounded like I haven't looked into it too much, but it sounded like a good thing to just refresh yourself, or if you have questions, you can look it up. And so anyway, we're paying those dues, so we should get what we can out of it. So,
and I know it's a simple ad. I almost want to say because you submit a list of selectmen every year, right?
Yep.
I think they automatically take our email address and build the account. I think you just have to go log in and change your password. Because I've used mine for years. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah, I
All
think
right.
that's right.
Yeah, I haven't even tried it out. It was one of those things that.
I think it's already done with
Oh,
what
cool.
access we're allowed to have. So.
Cool. Yeah, that was it on that. It was a little sidetrack, but.
Okay. All right. Anything else on the town warrant?
No.
All right. All in favor? Passes 5-0. John, anything on your report you want to go through?
Not. No, I think we've kind of gone through everything else in terms of the up-to-dates. But maybe this is a good time to. We're gonna go to executive session after this. I have a quick little thing that I want to chat about, but before we go, I think this is a good time to say goodbye to Brian.
Yeah.
10 and a half. It was 10 and a half years of being a member of the Board of Selectmen in one town is a long time. For anyone who has sense in themselves, that's 10 and a half years too many, but you didn't have enough sense. So you fully figured it out now. But look, I, as I said in my report, it's hard to do this job. I mean, I think the 5 of you understand how hard it is to be a selectman. I did it for 3 years. There's a lot of things you wish you could do, but there's a reason why, and you have to sit there and figure it out. And you, Brian, you walked into a town and a lot of positive and great things, but it could have been a little bit better, and you took that opportunity and did that. And we're going through that budget. I mean, that's a very different budget than the one you saw 10 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
So that's due in large part to the work you've done, and you guys really set the stage for a lot of the. We have some hard decisions to make in the budget, but they're not nearly as hard as they could have been, and so I appreciate it. I appreciate the fact that you called me up when this job was open a few years ago and said, hey, you want to put your name in again? Because the first time you could have hired me, but that's all right. We'll let it go.
So,
But
John, I
Third time
wanted
is
to
a
go on
charm,
record
John.
that
Third time is a
I
charm.
wanted to go on record that I wanted you. I wanted the local guy. Just so
see,
you
I
know.
knew. Well, I knew Wanda was smart, but Brian, and
I didn't have any other applicants though, so Brian was digging at anything he could find.
someday I'll tell the story of that interview. All like nervous, I gotta win them over. Here we go. And then Joel's like, well, we were the only applicant. Like, come on, man.
Yeah, because I didn't tell him that. I had to think made him think he had competition,
Yeah. Had to work for it, right? Yeah, but I want to thank you for working with you. I had a great time working with you, Brian. What is it? How long have I been here? 4.5 years, something like that. Yeah, I know, right? It's crazy. I've had it's a chair and an administrator, and sometimes that can be a very challenging thing because we're doing the day-to-day stuff, and you got to run the board, and we've always kind of seen things the same, looking from the same perspective, or if we didn't, we kind of bounced around different ideas, and so that's going to be tough, and it's going to be big shoes, to fill for the next acting chair, and for the chair people to be. But you've done a great service to the town, and I just wanted to say I appreciate. For me personally, I appreciate bringing me on board here 4.5 years ago. But on behalf of the staff, certainly, you've been a big supporter and supportive of us. So good luck to you, and I will follow along your YouTube channel and all the hijinks that come. So good luck.
That's right.
Thank
Follow me
you,
on my
Brian.
YouTube channel.
I'd just like to say when I joined the board, it's weird talking about years because I'm coming up on this is my 6th year, and so Brian's beard looked just like mine when I joined the board. This is what Brian looked like. He had all this hair, and his beard was this color, And then look at what happened in just, just a couple of terms. It really does take it out on you. But
It does.
but no, I just want to say it's been a pleasure serving with you for for the past 6 years, and the main thing that I've learned from you is just putting the town interests at the forefront, and really making sure that all your decisions and things that you push for, and sometimes you have to dig your heels in and catch flack for it, but we're all doing this for the best of the town. I think you've done a really good job with that, and the town's better for it. So that's what I'm going to continue to do, and it's been good being on the board. Time flies when you're having fun. Doesn't feel like it's been that long. So
Suppose you're here, evidently.
yeah. So thank you, Brian.
Well, thank you guys. It's been an honor and privilege to serve with you guys, all the board members in the past, decade. God, and to serve the town of Newcastle. I've enjoyed pretty much, I won't say every minute of it, but probably 95% of it has been really good. Like I said, it's been an honor and privilege, and I'm gonna miss it. Maybe.
We appreciate it.
But yeah, so this is, I don't know what I'm gonna do with my Monday nights now. I'm gonna have to come up with something new to do.
You can watch us.
I can watch you, yes. I can become the 20th subscriber to the YouTube channel.
Some night we may screw up the stream, and we'll put your videos up on our stream, our site.
Put some of my videos up. Follow me on my YouTube channel.
That's right.
On the road with Brian and Bertha. It should be fun. We've got like 5 videos up now.
Wow.
Awesome. Talked us into doing this, so should be different.
Cool.
Well, we're gonna have you back. There is some lovely parting gifts that we have for you, but they're not ready yet. So this is what, when you get done at a normal time, like, Ben and Carolyn did, it gives us, a little bit of time to get these things figured out. But we have some things we got for you. So Brian's going to be across the bridge, if, I guess, it's,
Horrible.
But so we'll have you back at some point to go over that. But yeah, so you're not walking away empty-handed. But we
need to dry in the check you're writing me for, because I get a percentage of what we've put in the bank over the years.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Brian, we're going to give you stuff because you need more. You haven't got rid of enough yet.
Right. Make sure it's good. I can sell it on Marketplace.
Exactly.
Oh God.
I'm personally customizing your trailer home.
Are you? Oh, nice.
Yeah.
It's got a little work.
Don't look at it. It's a work in progress. It's not coming out so good right now, but I'm gonna work through it, I promise. Hope you have insurance.
I need it up to get to your van, so. All right. Well, thank you guys. Appreciate it. I guess now we can move forward to the last thing on our item, executive session. So we need 1 MRSA section 406C for real estate. Have a motion? Thank you, Joel. Have a second? Thank you, Rob. All in favor?